The salt wind off the sunset sea tasted of knives when it cut across Euron Greyjoy's cheeks. And that pleased him. On the Silence's foredeck, he stood motionless, black oilskin cloak slack against his frame, every ripple of sail above reflecting moonlight like tarnished silver scales. He tilted his head and listened, not to the groaning masts or the hush of the obedient crew, but to something thin and distant, a sound a lesser soul might call the ghost breath of the world itself. It crooned to him from the east, where broken Valyria slept beneath smoking waves, and its promise was sweeter than any song the dusky woman had ever whispered in his ear. He shut his remaining eye to savor the pull of it, let his mind drift back across half a lifetime of hungers. Crow's Eye, they called him. Yet even ravens knew fear where he would sail. He remembered the jade dream wine stolen from the warlocks of Karth, a draught that had tasted of betrayal and lightning. He remembered the yawning black door a shadebinder opened for him in the markets of Ashai, and how its hinges shrieked with souls once molten in dragonfire. Each step, each sacrifice, had been a rung upon a ladder few even suspected existed. And now, the topmost rungs glittered before him, wrapped in vapor and ruin and the shapes of things that had never known chains. The hull beneath his boots thrummed with a cadence, not of tide or carpentry, but of desire. Silence loved her master and echoed his lust. Euron sensed her eagerness and lifted a gauntleted hand, gesturing. One by one, reedy smoked torches flared along the ship's rails, their brands pitched into bronze baskets fashioned like gaping worm jaws. The crew, tongueless men whose throats he himself had opened, moved in a hush deeper than any benediction, their eyes shining with reflected flame, awaiting only the movements of his fingers to interpret a will none of them could hear. When dawn grayed the rim of the world, the scattered mists ahead had parted, and through the thinning veil rose pillars of ragged stone, hulking like broken teeth. Even at distance the rocks seemed wrong, half melted by an ancient heat that had lingered long after flesh and scale and palace marble had been consumed. Black glass patches glimmered on cliff faces, smoothed by unholy fires. Farther inland, a low reddish glow pulsed, as if the archipelago's heart still beat beneath slag. Valyria, cradle of the freehold, seat of gods pretending at mortality, tomb of dragons. Some of his men trembled then. He smelled it on them, sweat sharp and sudden. Old sailors' tales swore that demons prowled those ruins, that grayscale crept like ivy across exposed skin, that ships strayed close only to vanish, their crews returned to stone. Euron tasted their fear and grinned. Let them quake. Fear was a sculptor, and he required statues of proper reverence. The silence threaded a channel between the salt shards where currents snarled and sucked. Euron guided the helmsman by silent gestures, eyesight piercing morning haze. He alone perceived the shifting eddies of fire beneath the waterline, runnels of magma weaving like veins. He felt them answer. In Ashai he had bartered an eye for that sight, had let a blood mage pluck it from his socket and drop it into a copper bowl, filled with quaking shadow. Now the world's hidden heart laid itself bare whenever he wished, and its murmurs guided his keel true. They anchored at midday in a bay shaped like a dragon's ribcage. Cliffs ribbed with half-melted spires bowed over the anchorage. No birds wheeled there, no crabs scuttled on the strand. Steam sighed through fissures in the sand, and the air stank of bronze left too long upon a forge. Euron stepped first onto the umber shore, boots scattering chips that might have been pumice or bone, a difference lost when both had burned together. He inhaled deeply and thought he could almost taste history snuffed in an instant. Ancient conquests, sorceries, dynasties. The silence of finality. 2 of his captains followed, one Hyos, who owed him 50 souls, and sallow Sigfrid, whose lips were sewn in black silk for crimes the captain scarcely recalled. They carried between them a chest, banded in Valyrian steel, and locked with living shadow glass. Every stride they took the metal quivered, lines of glyphs crawling across the lid like worms of quicksilver yearning for soil. The chest's contents had been wrenched from the vaults beneath Pike's deep keep, but its substance lay older than anything wrought by men. Euron guided them inland along a rent that might have once formed a grand avenue. Blackened statues, half sunken in slag, jutted at cracked angles. A dragon lord's likeness fused to the shoulders of what might have been a consort or concubine. Euron paused before one such grotesque fusion and touched the stone. Heat lingered still, pulsing faint. Overhead, clouds gathered in roiling coils, lit from within by glimmers of emerald and violet lightning. He sensed the memory of dragons everywhere. Not the stunted creatures the Targaryens bred in later centuries, but the old worms colossal, wreathed in sorcery, bred by Valyrian priests who whispered to mountain hearts until fire took form. Their ghosts hung in the air like half-heard roars. Euron extended his mind to them, let their rage and yearning flow through the black iron ring he wore on one finger, a circlet he had taken from the corpse of a Volantine triarch who tried to resurrect his own hatchlings by blood ritual. The ring throbbed, veins of carmine light crawling across the metal toward his palm. At last they reached the mouth of a cavern where vortices of steam corkscrewed outward. The entrance yawned like a severed esophagus, stone-ridged and slick. Euron lifted 2 fingers. The chest-bearers set their burden down and retreated. He alone walked forward, cloak dragging through wet ash until even moon-pale daylight shrank to a smear behind him. The corridor slanted downward. Twisted columns of obsidian rose on either side, carved in bas reliefs depicting dragons interwoven with kneeling men. But those men possessed no faces, gouged away by unknown hands, or perhaps by the convulsion that shattered the empire. Euron's torch sputtered, flame-limned turquoise rather than amber, though no breeze stirred. Shadows curved behind him, elongated, sometimes flaring like wings. He arrived at a chamber vast enough to swallow a cathedral. Its roof was lost in darkness streaked with red fire slits. Its floor was a lake of glassy obsidian, violet veins pulsing beneath as if molten blood. In the center rose a dais wrought of fused dragon bone, and atop it a monolith split down the middle by a jagged wound. The crack exhaled vapors shimmering with tiny sparks, embers that darted and vanished. This was the heart. He recognized it from visions granted by the warlock's wine. Here, the Freehold had changed something older than their language, and used its power to shape legions, forge fleets, and command skies. The doom had erupted when those chains snapped. But Euron did not come merely to observe a tomb. He aimed to reopen the wound and beckon forth what remained. He unfastened a pouch at his belt, and withdrew the last heart, a kraken fetus, preserved in brine and smoke. With his other hand, he produced a dragon-glass dagger, edges winking red. Kneeling before the monolith, he sliced his palm, let blood sluice over the dagger's blade, then stabbed the fatal heart. It burst with a hiss, spilling dark ichor that smelled of tide pools and thunder. He smeared the mixture along the crack, each stroke forcing liquid into the wound as if feeding an ancient mouth awake. A tremor rippled across the chamber. No mere earthquake, but a living response. The cavern's roof thudded with something vast moving just beyond mortal sight. A wind poured from the fissure, hot yet somehow wet, carrying echoes of reptilian shrieks layered atop human crying. Euron felt his own blood quicken, every heartbeat slamming like oars upon an ocean of bone. He laughed, low and rapturous. Outside, on the silence, the sea rose inexplicably despite calm skies. Vortices formed in the shallows, spiraling counter to tide. Tongueless sailors knelt as one, sensing a summons that vibrated through their sternums. The torches along the rails flared green, wicks twisting into serpentine shapes. One guy, Joss, whispered a prayer that no god he knew would answer. Within the heart, sparks erupted along the crack, coalescing into shapes, long sinuous forms of light, wings beating soundless thunder. Dragon spirits, half-formed, embryonic yet hungry. Their eyes were molten coals, their bodies nebulous, scale patterns flickering like constellation maps made flesh. They circled Euron, noses sniffing at the scent of living marrow. He raised his bleeding hand, offering the savor of iron. One spirit lowered its luminescent head. Where incorporeal teeth met human flesh, agony seared him. But he did not flinch. The pain tasted sharp as victory. He spoke then, not in words of any tongue, but in pulses of will refined by shadow. "Bind to me," his soul sang. "Roam the world once more in my wake, burn those who would chain you. Together we shall unmake thrones and raise new ones upon pillars of smoke." The spirits answered with a harmony of screeches that shivered his bones. A wind swept his cloak outward, lines of runes ignited across the dais. The monolith cracked wider, vomiting gouts of incandescent mist. Shapes burst forth. More spectral worms, small at first, then one vaster than the rest, its wingspan eclipsing the chamber, its belly a furnace of white flame. Euron braced himself, lips peeled back in exultation. The colossal spirit spread its wings, and the roof melted at the edges, raining obsidian droplets that hissed upon contact with superheated air. It regarded Euron with eyes like twin suns glimpsed through eclipse, full of hunger, cunning, and cores of ancient memory. He felt it peer through every thread of his being, weigh him as dragon lords once weighed slaves. He exposed himself fully, letting his dark joys bloom. The ships burned, the men bled, the songs of drowning cities. He welcomed its judgment. At length the spirit's wings folded. It lowered its head until a nostril of swirling fire hovered before his chest. He pressed his bleeding palm to it. Flesh met living flame. Where they touched, a sigil burned itself onto his skin, a spiral of twisted iron crowned with a blazing eye. The pain stopped instantly. In its wake followed a sensation of depthless cold. He felt something coil inside him, filling hollows he had not known existed. Alike to possession, yet he remained Euron, only more. Rumbles shook the cavern. Fissures radiated outward. The obsidian lake fractured, shards rising like teeth. Spirits streamed upward in torrents, bursting through the cracked roof. Outside, clouds sundered, spearing columns of emerald fire high into the sky. Lightning forked sideways, sculpting draconic shapes that roared without sound. Euron walked from the chamber, leather boots unburned though molten lines coursed beside them. Each stride felt lighter, skin tingling with hidden scales. At the entrance sallow Siegfried waited, slack-jawed. Euron's single eye now glowed cerulean, the pupil slit like that of a reptile. When he spoke, his voice reverberated with distant thunder. "Have the men ready the sails. There is a wind coming." Above, the dragon spirits ascended in spirals, testing wings within currents unseen by mortal sailors. Some circled the silence, tails of sparks raining upon the deck to scatter like fireflies. Yet no timber charred, they were flame of another world, half real, half thought. Euron boarded, hand on the railing where a spirit's afterglow lingered, wisping into his veins. The crew gaped, tongues severed yet throats taut with unvoiced questions. He gestured, "Hoist anchor, unfurl canvas," and they obeyed as if strings pulled their limbs. As the silence drifted from the bay, the once a quiet sea erupted in columns of steam. Great fissures opened along the shoreline. From them rose silhouettes vast as towers, shadows of ancient dragons etched in living fire. They shrieked, and the shriek rolled across waves like a blade. The water churned red, then black, then clear again as if nothing troubled its depths. Euron smiled. They were drawn, leashed not by chains but by his audacity, his singular will. By twilight, they reached open water, Valyria dwindling behind into a storm of lurid color. A ghostly array of wings followed overhead, invisible to all, save those who dared glance directly at the stars, where each constellation now burned brighter, as if watching. Euron stood at the prow, breathing salt mingled with brimstone. He felt the world stretch before him like parchment, blank save for the lines he would burn across it. Night conceded to dawn once more. On the horizon the shattered towers of Volantis loomed, first stop upon his pilgrimage. Dragons remembered Volantis, its black walls carved by Valyrian artisans to mimic home. Now their spirits yearned to hear those stones crack anew. Euron's smile widened. He flexed the hand branded by flame. The sigil glowed faint under morning light. Behind him, on the mainmast, a spirit coiled around the yardarm, tail flicking sparks that traced glyphs in empty air. No sailor dared meet its gaze. He spoke again into the wind, words swallowed before they reached mortal ears. The dragon spirits answered with a rumble that rippled across the sails. filling them without breeze. The silence surged forward, faster than any current. In the hold, the living shadow glass chest cracked open on its own, and from within rose a low hum as though echoing the spirit's chorus. Something inside shifted, another gift yet to hatch. Euron descended the companionway, boots clanging upon iron-banded steps. The hold smelled of pitch and salt, yet overlaying those was the sharp scent of lightning. He knelt before the chest, placed his branded palm upon the lid. It parted like lips, revealing a sphere of coalesced dusk, swirling purple shot through with gold threads. He leaned close. Inside the sphere fluttered countless wings, embryonic echoes of the greater spirits above, a host of lesser flames awaiting shape. He whispered promises into the sphere, secrets of cities he would offer as nesting grounds. King's Landing, Old Town, Lannisport Diet. He spoke of iron men riding storms, of krakens rising beside dragons, of a throne of salt and shadow that none could withstand. The sphere brightened, flickers dancing across his cheeks. Somewhere overhead, a spirit shrieked in answer, and the hull vibrated like a plucked harp string. When he returned topside, the first Volantene scout ships had appeared, sails striped black and orange. They slowed upon seeing the shimmering forms above Euron's masts. Shapes half glimpsed, half imagined, yet undeniably vast. Trumpets bleated from wooden decks. Signal flags snapped. Euron raised a hand and felt the spirit's eagerness flood him. But restraint, he reminded himself. The game must savor each move. He signaled one High Joss, who relayed commands with practiced gestures. Silence heaved to a halt. Euron stepped to the bulwark, cupping lips that now tasted faintly of ash. "Send a boat," he called across calm water, voice carrying farther than any human shout should. "Come speak with your future." Minutes later, a Volantene galley's captain approached in a skiff, eyes wide at the translucent dragons overhead. He shouted credentials, but Euron waved them aside. "Tell your masters," he said softly, "that the air of the storm has awakened what their ancestors could never tame. Tell them I offer mercy. Open your gates, surrender your fleets, and watch as I teach the world the sound of falling crowns." The captain stared, unable to form a response. Above, a spirit dipped low, its tail flicking the skiff's bow. Wood smoked instantly, yet did not ignite, leaving only a blackened kiss. The captain flinched, sweat pooling in the hollow of his throat. "Go," Euron whispered, though the word felt like a tempest. The skiff fled. Volantene ships turned, sails billowing in frantic retreat for the city's great black wall. Euron chuckled. Fear traveled faster than flame. Soon the whispers would grow into storms of rumor. Storms he would ride westward. Night fell again. Fires bloomed upon the horizon. Volantis preparing its defenses, catapults set ablaze, priests chanting at altars. On the silence, Euron reclined in a chair of oak and narwhal bone, feet crossed upon the rail. The dragon spirits circled slowly, burning constellations and breathing eerie choir notes. He closed his eye and drifted upon those sounds, letting them weave dreams of conquest. In those visions he saw Red Keep towers crumble under spectral talons. He saw Aegon's high hill become a nest of emerald flame. He saw even the wall melt, revealing pale lights beyond that fled from dragonfire. The spirits fed him images too, memories of Valyria before the doom. Streets of marble aflame with festival lanterns, shadows of creatures greater than Viserion or Drogon soaring between temple spires, sorcerers pooling their minds to rend mountains for sport. Euron drank these sights like wine. They affirmed what he already believed, that mankind's small ambitions bored the gods, that only those who dared unmake the order of things could ascend among men. Dawn's first glimmer painted the silence's hull red. Volantis rose ahead, its massive black wall straining under the weight of newfound terror. Inside, a column of smoke already rose, perhaps from riot, perhaps from sacrifice. Euron stood, scanning battlements where lanterns flickered like panicked eyes. He breathed deep, extended his branded hand, and spoke a word he had learned in the deeps of his mind. A word whose syllables cracked on air like shattering obsidian. The biggest of the dragon spirits shrieked, arcs of flame slithering around its translucent ribs. Without a sound it dived, wings slicing wind. A second, then a third followed, each trailing a comet tail of ember motes. They converged upon the black wall. Stone that had endured 4,000 years met flame born before the shaping of the wall's very bricks. Reality warped, a sudden bloom of white so bright sailors covered their sightless sockets. When vision returned, a chunk of the black wall lay molten, slumping inward like candle wax. But that strike was merely a warning. Euron wanted the slow dread to set. He ordered the spirits back with a thought. They wheeled skyward, leaving lava rivers cooling to black glass across Valyrian stone. Inside the city, bells rang in nightmare cadence. Euron smiled. Panic would loosen sinew from bone. Soon Volantis would tear itself apart without him needing to raise another finger. He signaled for silence to hold position. Clouds gathered overhead, swirling like the iris of an eye. Within them, the spirits coiled. Lightning webbed across sky, outlining fleeting jawlines and talon arcs. Thunder boomed with unnatural cadence, once, twice, thrice, like the pulsed beating of some primordial heart. Each boom rippled the sea, sending concentric rings outward toward other realms, other lords and kings comfortable in their illusions of safety. Euron waited. When at last a flotilla of Volantene dignitaries rode forth under white banners, he did not rise. He let them approach, clamber onto his deck, witness tongueless sailors with scarred throats and eyes glowing faint with reflected spirit fire. He let them behold the ring on his finger swirling like a storm glass, the branded palm. Words poured from their mouths, oaths, bribes, tremulous threats. But he silenced them with a soft laugh. "Send tribute," he said. "Ships, slaves, spices, priests, gold, none of it matters. What I claim is obedience. Swear by blood and flame, or watch your children learn the taste of ash." Behind him, a spirit descended to rest upon the mainmast, its weightless body coiling in grand serpentine loops. The dignitaries' courage shattered. They knelt on planks sticky with sea salt and pitch. Lightning flashed. In its strobe, Euron saw the next stages unfold. Volantis' surrender, then Moirine's, then Korth's jade gates ground to powder. He would sail west after, across the narrow sea, carrying dragons that were and were not. Dragonstone would kneel, the Iron Throne would melt, and the world's maps would redraw in lines of flame. But even such visions were mere preludes. The spirits whispered deeper secrets, of gates beneath the shivering sea, of wells where color bled from reality, of stars that sang when pierced by dragon claws. Perhaps, when all crowns powdered to cinders, he would sail the night sky itself, cheat even death, forging an empire of void and fire. For now, though, the game demanded patience. 5 hours, he mused, a fine span to let a symphony build. Each movement must linger, each dissonant chord taste the air before resolving. He gestured for the dignitaries to rise, eyes cold with promise. "Go," he murmured. "Spread my tidings. Tell the world the doom walks again, but this time it wears a smiling face." They hurried from his deck. As their boat pulled away, Euron turned to the horizon where distant thunderstorms flickered like forges. Somewhere within, other spirits stirred, sensing brethren born anew. He inhaled their scent, ozone, memory, longing, and knew the banquet had only begun. Above, the dragon spirits hummed, orbiting the silence in slow, stately procession, wings beating time to a heartbeat that now thundered behind his ribs. Euron Greyjoy closed his eye and listened, and where the doom had once ended, a new song of ruin began to rise. Oh, indeed. Water drummed in nervous pulses against the silence's hull, as dusk bled into night. Far above the mast-top, dragon spirits drifted like living constellations, their ghost fire soaking the clouds in sheets of emerald and amethyst until the sky itself seemed forged from shattered gemstones. On deck, the tongueless crewmen worked the sheets with jittering haste. Sailors who had weathered every gale from Old Wick to Five Forts, yet now trembled at the breath they felt but could not name. The air smelled not of brine alone, but of smelted iron, wet ash, and the sharp sweetness of newborn flame. Euron Greyjoy leaned against the serpent-shaped rail, boots planted wide, black cloak flapping in the unnatural breeze that only circled his ship. Beneath the leather, his branded palm throbbed steady as a drum. With each heartbeat he sensed the chorus of wings above, and the hosts cocooned below within the living shadowglass sphere. They whispered across the masts in a language older than the first tongue, each syllable a chord strummed on an organ of bones. He understood them now without thought. Knowledge seeped through the ring on his finger like brine through planks. Behind him, one eye Joss approached in cautious steps, palms up in placation. Though the captain's solitary eye glittered with awe, some scaffold of reason remained in him. Enough to question the tide his master rode. He knelt at Euron's side and pressed his brow to the deck. "My lord," Joss rasped, voice ragged from years of smoke and salt. "Valyria stands ready to parley. They send carts of gold, bolts of summer silks, more sandalwood than a dozen fleets could burn. Their priests gather under the black wall, wailing that the doom's ghosts have come to claim every unpurified soul. Even the tiger priests bend knee. They beg to know your price." "Merci." Euron's smile cut moonlight. "Price," he echoed, tasting the word. He lifted his branded hand, and the sigil glowed faintly beneath its crust of blood. In the distance, thunder boomed, though no storm clouds yet dared encroach on the aurora of spirit fire. "Tell them the price is their breath. They may keep breathing if they remember whose lungs decide." Joss swallowed. "And the dragons, lord? The men? Some say they cannot hold if more of those shapes descend. They fear the ship will burn from the inside." Euron turned then, blue-lit eye fixing on the captain, until the older man flinched. "Let them fear. Fear is the coin that buys loyalty when silver melts." He clapped Joss's shoulder. "Metal gauntlet biting flesh. Hold the line. Lash any who falter. If they doubt, point their stumps skyward." He glanced to the heavens, where a massive spirit hung like a moon with wings. "The sky bleeds promise tonight." He strode aft, cloak swirling behind like ink in water. Each footstep echoed beyond timber, reverberations descending into the bilge and the cargo hold, where the living sphere lay suspended in a cradle of iron ribs. Flickers of purple gold danced within, swirling faster as his branded palm neared. He paused at the hatch, rested his hand upon the iron. Metal warmed beneath his skin, and he felt the unborn host rustle like an ocean of unhatched eggs. "Wait," he told them, tapping once. "Soon you shall wear flesh." The sphere pulsed, but he damped their hunger with a thought. Only then did he descend the staircase toward the orlop deck. Here hammocks swung empty. Murmured dread had driven the crew to sleep curled on open decks where skyfire might watch them. He savored their terror like a rare Dornish wine and pressed onward, soles clanging on iron treads until he reached the lower hold. A grotto of shadows and saltwater stench. At the center, the chest of shadowglass had cracked fully open. The sphere swam within eddies of living darkness, its surface rippling like oil in moonlight. Tiny motes darted under the membrane. Embryonic dragon spirits, barely sparks. They blurred around a darker nucleus. A single embryonic creature larger than the rest, coiled tight as a rosebud. Euron crouched, eye bright with adoration. "Soon," he breathed, "I will carve you a carcass of smoke and clay. We will teach men why their ancestors worshipped fear." His tongue licked blood off his lip, where excitement had nicked flesh. A shudder rippled through the hull. Above, a hollow boom echoed twice, thrice. Cannon? No. Valyria possessed no black powder. He climbed swiftly and emerged onto the waist deck to find the heavens churning. Clouds whirled into a vortex overhead, every spiral rimmed with violet flame. Sheet lightning strobed down the funnel like ribs glimpsed beneath translucent flesh. At the core hovered that great spirit, the first that had taken his blood. It stretched its wings wide, and with each beat, the black wall miles distant groaned anew, stones sweating fissures. The very sky groaned as pressure dropped. Sailors clutched ears, some vomiting from the tilt of air. Euron raised his hand and commanded them through mind alone. "Not yet, hold fast," and the spirit froze mid-stroke. Lightning halted as if blinked out. Only after a long hush did the vortex loosen, letting stars peek through. He exhaled. Taming such titans required finesse. Break their chains, yet bind them to a pulse of will they could not outpace. Already he felt the burn. His heart hammered erratic. Muscles spasmed, as if lilting to alien rhythms. Too much command might scourge his own flesh. Yet he smiled at that razor's edge, for what was glory without the tremor of doom? A bell clanged from the foredeck. 3 quick peals. Joss returned, limbs clotted with sweat. Triarchs at the gates, Lord. They bring the royal elephants as tribute, gilded tusks, and silk-wrapped trunks, each banner dipped in wine. He wiped his brow. They fear to load them on our decks, but will chain them to barges. Lead where you will. Euron flicked a glance at a nearby spirit curling through rigging. Its weightless body brushed a rope. Fibers hissed, yet did not char. Tell Valantis elephants make poor shipmates. Have them slaughter the beasts and stack tusks on the quay. Blood attracts my allies. He gestured upward toward spectral wings. Then open their harbor chain. Before dawn we dock inside their black wall. Nepesema. Joss hesitated. Inside, Lord. Their middle basin abuts the temple of the Lord of Light. Undying flames. They say no shadow may pass. Euron's grin widened, teeth catching green sheen. Let us see if shadows obey such doctrine. He leaned forward until they breathed the same miasma. I did not awaken gods to wait at any man's door. We dine in their holiest sanctuary. And we leave at dusk. Volantis shall pay tithe in ships. They will crew them. My fleet multiplies without forging a single nail. Joss bowed and stumbled off, barking silent orders. Sailors scurried, faces drawn taut. Euron watched from quarterdeck rail as the silence glided mouth open toward the estuary mouth. Along the banks torchlines flickered, each flame a prayer to whichever deity now felt near enough to taste sweat. Everywhere bells tolled, not harmonious but frantic, each tower racing the next for louder peals. Over the river's shrouded water, specters of dragons wove, reflections rippling atop mirrored black. The portcullis chain groaned as winches turned. Peerless Volantini engineers, heirs to Valyrian craft, stared gape-mouthed while their own irons parted. Great barges drifted anchored mid-channel, elephants kneeling, tusks ablaze with braziers. Priests in orange robes stood chanting, hair shaved, save for topknots beaded in tiger bones. Euron felt contempt curdle. He lifted a single finger. The largest spirit answered. It descended in silence, body the size of a war galley, yet windless. It hovered inches from an elephant's trembling head. The beast raised its trunk in instinctive salute before a halo of emerald fire engulfed it. No scream, only a flash, then ash swirling where flesh had stood. The fire licked along the rope lines, unbound them without scorching deck planks, leaving nothing but glowing tusks that clattered onto oaken beams. Priests fell to knees, ash-gray faces speckled with sparks that refused to burn them. A benediction of terror. Euron gave a nod. The spirit rose to perch, astride the harbor chain's northern tower, claws sinking into basalt as if soft cheese. Only then did silence sail onward, ghosts escorting above. By sunup, they were moored directly beneath the black wall's shadow, the gigantomachy murals depicting ancient freehold victories glistening with dew. Euron disembarked alone onto cracked obsidian steps that once knew the boots of dragonlords. Spirits followed in swirling arcs, drawing patterns upon stone. Serpentine loops interlocking like sigils to open gates unseen. Doors older than Aegon's conquest sighed outward, revealing corridors aglow with red glass lanterns. Inside waited the Triarchs, 5 instead of 3, for succession had turned fractal in panic. They were flanked by tiger-cloaked guards, eyes wide behind bronze visors. Incense filled the atrium until breath was labor. Euron inhaled the cloying smoke, tasted cinnamon myrrh, and fear. Crow's eye, rasped an elder Triarch whose beard trembled against his chestplate. You trespass upon ground sanctified by the unbroken line of... Euron flicked his palm. Green-white sparks leapt from air and settled on the marble. Veins of dragonfire spidered outward, tracing patterns across tiles until they formed a map of the Freehold's provinces. Each province then cracked, shattering like thin ice. The Triarch swallowed his words. "I trespass wherever interest guides," Euron spoke. His voice echoed with undertones. Not an echo, but layered accompaniment. Deeper, reptilian, as though a hidden chorus spoke through him. "Bring me parchments of your ship registries, lists of slave collars, the logs of each Volantine bank. My ravens must know the measure of your heartbeat." One Triarch mustered courage. "And if we refuse?" Euron's eye brightened. He extended his branded hand until violet sigils shone through flesh. A modest spirit, no larger than a racing hound, slipped free of his sleeve, composed of pure ember. It circled the man's ornate sandal, melted the gold buckle in silence. The Triarch jumped back, robe smoking at the hem. "Refuse," Euron said mildly, "and flame will teach new dances." They did not refuse. Within an hour, scribes flooded the temple, with scrolls stacked like siege ladders. Euron leafed through each, mind-absorbing numbers faster than a maester's ink. His plots webbed outward. Galleys in Lycian harbors ripe for capture, spice convoys off Basilisk Isles, storm god cult ships seeking omens. He assigned each target to a ghost. Outside, the populace watched rooflines where spirit silhouettes flickered like lantern puppets. Mothers shoved children beneath doorframes. Sellswords ran coins across knuckles, in prayers for luck that would not come. After midday, Euron summoned the Red Temple's high priestess, Melora of the Cinder Vale. She arrived flanked by silent acolytes, red silks smoldering with embroidered flames. She knelt, though priests never kneeled save to R'hllor. "You wield fire not of this world," she whispered, voice quavering. "Our God is flame, made flesh. Are these his servants returned?" Euron caressed the ring on his finger. "Perhaps your God has many names. Would you serve him, through me?" He offered his palm. The sigil gleamed. Melora stared, pupils dilated in the ghost fire. Slowly she reached, fingertips brushing his brand. A spark jumped. She gasped as though plunged into ice. Visions stormed her eyes, reflections of ancient Valyria, of volcanoes birthing serpents of light. She sagged, cheeks sluiced with tears. "Yes," she breathed. "I see the sacred glow." "Good." He let her hands remain. "You will send ravens along the slave roads. Preach that dragons rise within the shadows of night. They bring mercy to those who kneel before the eye of storms." He pointed upward where a spirit coiled. "Let the faithless believe this Orlor's new face. I care not whose altar they bow to, only that their throats bare for my blade." She bowed deeper. "So it shall be written." By the time orange dusk flooded the river, Volantis had capitulated entire. Galleys once manned by oarsmen in chains were recrewed by their former masters. Collars swapped for ghost fire sigils painted on helms. One by one, they rode out to flank silence. Banners replaced by a single stylized eye, encircled by hurricane waves. Euron stood upon the quarterdeck, wind tugging silver-streaked hair. He surveyed the flotilla, 24 strong by sunset. More would follow. His new priests spread messages faster than ravens. When darkness descended, he raised his arm. The dragon spirits answered, swirling into a gigantic spiral above, their collective glow visible for leagues. At the center hung the eldest, wings enfolding Euron's flagship in protective halo. With a thought, he directed them. Due east, across Summer Sea to Slaver's Bay. Meereen's pyramids would be next, then Astapor, Yunkai. The world would watch the old chains of blood break under ghosts of fire. They set sail at midnight. Volantis receded behind, still aflame where temples burned as sacrifice. Wind blew steady but not natural. Sails billowed while surrounding sea lay almost glassy. Silence parted water like a knife stroking silk. Behind, escort galleys formed a wake that gleamed green under starlight. 2 days they voyaged thus, spirits patrolling the fleet perimeter. On the third sunrise, a bank of fog rolled south of the Isle of Cedars, thick and unnatural. Scouts reported no breeze carried it. Euron ordered turn toward the mist, sensing hidden invitation. Within, water stilled to eerie calm. The fleet's oars clacked hollow in the muffled air. Above, spirits flickered in and out, their lights diffused like lanterns behind frosted glass. Sailors' whispers crawled across decks. They spoke of sea whites, of storms that devoured navies. Euron felt only anticipation. The fog thinned at its heart, revealing an isle no map recorded. A black crag jutting like a spear, its slopes latticed by hexagonal basalt columns. Atop the summit an arch of stone bent inward, forming a gateway filled with shimmering air. No vegetation clung. The rock bled orange rivulets that sizzled away before hitting surf. Euron ordered silence, anchored just offshore. He took a skiff with Joss and Sallow's Siegfried, plus 4 oarsmen. Dragon spirits trailed overhead. As they neared, he saw carvings etched upon the columns. Glyphs reminiscent of old Valyrian yet stranger. Angles of a language too old for men. Some pieces pulsed faintly, as though blood pumped beneath obsidian skin. They moored in a shelled inlet. Euron strode onto stony sand, boots crunching calcified skeletons of sea creatures boiled by volcanic vent. The archway loomed 3 times his height. Through it shimmered a vision of night skies swirling with colors not present outside. A vision spanning unknown stars. He felt the sphere within silence quiver violently, even at this distance. Its unborn throng flapped restless inside their membrane, drawn to the gateway. A revelation crystallized in his brain, delivered by the eldest spirit's inner snarl. This gate predated Valyria. Here the first dragons had slipped from another realm when the world still steamed newborn. The doom of Valyria was but a spark compared with what shuddered beyond that arch. Euron stretched his arms and laughed, loud enough to echo off columns. "Yes," he cried, "show me deeper gates. I will open them all. Memsalar." He pressed his branded palm to the threshold. The stone warmed, then liquefied under his touch, expanding into ripples of molten glass. Lights poured through, swirling auroras that coalesced into smaller dragon shapes darting like minnows. One touched his chest. Heat flooded him, then freezing void. Nails elongated momentarily, edges shining black as dragon glass before retracting to normal. He gasped, tasting copper. Behind, Joss groaned and fell, hand clutching temple. Siegfried stumbled back, stitches at lips, popping blood. But Euron remained, grinning as the gate drank his essence and responded with color bursts. From the fog high above, a quadrille of winged shadows descended. Different from his spirits, heavier, with masts that displaced air. They unfurled as they landed. Dragons of flesh, not ghost, yet their scales gleamed with translucent luster. Fog condensed on their hides, dripping like mercury. They eyed Euron with ancient intelligence. One lowered its head to sniff him. Breath gusted like kiln heat. Yet he did not sweat. He reached, palm meeting scale smoother than mirrored steel. The branded sigil flared, and the dragon blinked in comprehension. Without saddle or chain, Euron swung onto its neck, perched between ridges. The beast straightened, spread wings broader than the silence's length, and with a single downstroke hurled itself skyward. Wind screamed, triumphant laughter ripped from his throat. Fleet hulls shrank beneath. Spirits swarmed around him, cheering in flame. He rode higher, slicing fog layers to reveal blazing noon sun, yet above its brightness spread a void horizon where stars winked, cursed daylight signals. At that height, he saw all Slaver's Bay, green and gold, dots of pyramids spearing horizon. Every market square, every whip, every chain sparkled to his seer's vision like threads of iron oxide. He pointed a gauntleted finger. "Fly," he said to his new mount, and it obeyed. The other 3 drakes banked after, a vanguard of living flesh among hosts of ghostly kin. Beneath, the silence erupted in roars. Sailors howling in disbelief. Priests falling to knees. Joss staggered to rail, craned head upward. Terror warred awe in his single eye. Euron's laugh rumbled like thunder across vault of day. By next dawn, Meereen's walls trembled under ghost fire. Spectral dragons circled, while 4 physical drakes landed atop the Great Pyramid, claws carving rent lines through golden harpy wings. The city's defenders released arrows. but shafts bounced harmless off scales or vanished through spirits. Euron dismounted upon the pyramid's apex. He strolled to its edge, arms wide, cloak fanning behind. Thousands thronged the streets below, from pit fighters to wise masters, staring up at a silhouette now haloed by rising sun. He spoke, voice amplified by spirits. Each word resounded through every alley like a temple bell. Your chains are dust. Kneel not to masters of flesh, but to fire that writes new law. I am Crow's Eye, heir of storms, waker of Valyrian heart. Bend or burn. To punctuate, a spirit plunged into Marine's harbor and surfaced wreathed in steam, raising a ghostly roar that shattered harbor windows. Waves surged, slamming slave galleys against quays. Anchor chains snapped, hulls cracked. The harborside plazas flooded with your typical Marine's panic. Masters calling for unsullied long since fled. Freedmen shouting songs of revolution they did not understand. A single arrow, lacquered red, sailed up toward Euron. He caught it mid-air between finger and thumb, laughed, and flicked it skyward. One drake burst it with a snap of jaws, splinters raining like crimson snowflakes. By sunset Marine surrendered. Wise masters poured gold from terrace ledges, hoping to appease the dragons. Euron demanded more. Every archive copy of the Giscari slave codes, each law that bound man to chain, heaped in streets and set ablaze by spirit breath. Scroll ash drifted upward in swirling columns, feeding the ghosts' hungry glow. That night he feasted atop the pyramid on roasted lamb and pomegranates. Melora of the Cinder Vale presided, sprinkling each course with powder of crushed rubies. Joss sat silent, hands shaking as he tried to drink spiced wine without spilling. Sallow Siegfried stood behind, mouth stitches torn, lips sealed now by fear alone. Euron raised a goblet. To the next horizon he toasted. Karth's jade gates beckon. Overhead the eldest spirit glided, trailing stardust. The four flesh drakes slumbered curled around terrace corners, chests rumbling like distant volcanoes. The youngest, still embryonic within the sphere, trembled with eagerness, their pulses interlacing with his heartbeat. He drank deep, savoring sweet wine laced with blood. In the courtyard below, priests of Urhlor and Giscari scribes hammered together a new banner. A slit pupil eye encircled by spiraling storm waves, dragon wings unfurled behind. Fires cast the symbol huge against the pyramid face, a specter to haunt every dream in Slaver's Bay. Euron slept under the hush of winged beats and the distant moans of a city rebirthing itself. His dreams were fevered tapestries, in which ghost dragons devoured stars, vomiting night fire, to forge new constellations shaped like krakens. He awoke before dawn, sweating black tar that dried instantly to powder. He wiped his palm. The sigil beneath glowed brighter still, veins branching up his forearm like thin rivers of lapis. He stood, spied the horizon where a pale line suggested first light. The world quickens, he murmured to the silent drakes. Let us quicken faster. He walked to terrace edge. Spirits drifted down, swirling about him like scarves caught in cunning wind. He inhaled them, or they him. The boundary blurred. In the plaza, freedmen knelt, still half afraid to look up. He addressed them with a wave. Forge new chains of loyalty. Lash yourselves not to greed but to fear of wonder. Follow me and know terror, that frees instead of binds. They stared, confused, but he cared not. Comprehension would bloom in time, watered by rumor and ghostlight. He returned to the silence by river barge at midday, escorted by Marini skiffs crewed by ex-harpies, their former blades now etched with his eye sigil. Spirits ferried overhead. On board, the living sphere had grown, surface swirling faster, cracks spidering glass. He felt hatch imminent. Below decks he knelt before it, pressed his brow to its warmth. Burst, he told it softly. The skies thirst. Elsewhere across the world, ravens carried word. Dragons spectral and real ravaging east. Crow's Eye wearing Dune's mantle. Black wall melted, pyramids conquered. In Westeros, maesters argued over ravings. Kings weighed truths. At Dragonstone, a red priestess, interpreted pillars of flame dancing across distant waves. At King's Landing, Aegon's skulls rattled in vaults, though no wind stirred them. Yet these rumors mattered little aboard Silence. The ship rolled under starlight, prow angled toward the jade gates of Korth. Spirits escorted causeways of wind unknown to maps. Euron stood near the forecastle, hair-whipping eyes. A sudden chime sounded within his skull. Metal on metal inside bone. Toll. He spun, raced below, Joss trailing. The sphere had cracked wide. Tendrils of purple-gold fog billowed out. Within writhed dozens of young dragons, half spirit, half flesh, still translucent. As the membrane sloughed away, each landed upon deck planks, eyes glowing ember. They shrieked in chorus. A delicate, high-pitched cry like crystal glasses fracturing. Sailors scattered in terror. Euron laughed, arms wide. The hatchlings fluttered stubby wings, then one by one turned toward him, drawn to the branded light. They crawled over boots, up his cuirass, perching on shoulders like living jewelry. Their scales hardened from haze to onyx and copper, shading gradually into midnight violets. They tasted his breaths, tongues flicking excited at salt and madness. Joss watched, transfixed. "Lord," he whispered hoarsely. "What do you call them?" Euron stroked a hatchling's ridge. "Nameless," he said. "Nay shackles destiny. They will forge their own when cities whisper it in ashes." He looked up at vault of night. "We sail now, not with fleet, but with storm." Slaver's Bay lay behind, its fire still flickering on horizon. Ahead Korth's quartz gates glittered like teeth hungry for new fables. He strode to the quarterdeck, hatchlings clinging like ornate pauldrons. "Set every sail," he commanded. "Tonight we trial fresh wings." Wind erupted though no gust blew. Sails bellied, ropes whined. Silence leapt forward, prow slicing crests. Above, elder spirits howled, diving in spirals that pulled starfire down. The newly hatched beat small wings and rose, weaving between riggings, ripping holes in any flag not his own. Sailors cheered or cowered. Euron only spread arms, welcoming spray. Hours passed until first light stained sea in ribbons of pink. The hatchlings had thickened, their forms now solid. Some perched on yardarms, others nested along aft castle rails, flicking sparks into ocean. Fish leapt steaming where sparks struck. Smoke vented from Silence's bow as though boiled from within. One hatchling, brave or foolish, landed on Joss's shoulder. The captain froze, eye wide. The creature sniffed his ear, exhaled a puff of lilac flame that singed a curl of hair. Euron barked laughter. "They test you, Captain. Show mettle. They crave iron hearts." Joss forced a smile, jaw twitching. The hatchling chirped and fluttered to another perch. By noon they sighted the jade sea's turquoise shimmer. Merchant dhows dotted the horizon under lateen sails, emblazoned with lilies and silk birds. Upon glimpsing Euron's armada of ghost and scale, they veered like startled minnows, abandoning trade routes for coastal shallows. Euron let them flee. Rumor outran Ordad. Sallow Siegfried appeared, lower face sewn anew with coiled copper wire. A penance head chosen without instruction. Eyes glistened with mania. He bowed, presented a coffer of scrolls seized from Meereen's libraries. Prophecies of the blind butcher, litanies predicting a night of flying fires. Euron skimmed them, chuckled, and flicked them overboard. "Fate is ink I rewrite," he said. At sunset they anchored off the jade gates, two colossal tors carved of greenish stone. Gates parted by waterway wide enough for a dozen galleys abreast. Carved into the arch lintel, dragons devoured worlds of ivory. How quaint, thought Euron, when reality now outpaced artistry. The walls beyond bristled with crossbow turrets studded in gold. Korthine wore yachts, flashed amethyst signal lamps, a code of warning to citizens within. Spirits responded, swooping low to crackle their lights, sizzling them dark. On Silence, the hatchlings rose en masse, glowing throats vibrating with nascent flame. Euron stroked the eldest among them. "Not yet," he whispered. "Let Korth witness dusk, then open their vaults wide." He signaled the fleet to hold, Lanterns lit across masts, depicting his eye sigil in flame. Priests chanted sermons of the eye's storm in half a dozen tongues. Valyrian Giscari, summer tongue, the guttural rasp of basilisk slavers. A newborn religion compiling itself in real time. Night deepened. Quarth's walls glowed with gemstone lamps. Atop them, warlocks of the Undying emerged, faces chalk blue under moon, palms sending pale fireflies of magic spiraling. They chanted incantations older than their lean flesh. The air shifted. Spirits above flickered, unsettled by sorcery not birthed in Valyria's ashes. Euron watched with keen delight. At last, a foe that might scratch his new empire. He lifted his branded hand. The flesh drakes shrieked, wings beating storm. The ghostly elders lowered heads. Sparks leapt across heaven. The warlock's fireflies swarmed, seeking to encircle the spirits. They were swallowed instead, consumed like sparks in furnace throats. A backlash crackled, knocking robed bodies from parapets to plummet screaming. Walls shook. Glass mosaics, depicting the pureborn, shattered outward, raining shards. Within the city, doors burst. Crowds poured into moonlit avenues, half naked in silks, eyes painted. Some carried improbably tall spears of jade in futile defiance, others only jeweled fans now flapping in dread heat. Above them, the spiral of spirits created an eye of flame, iris dilating to cataclysm. He held them poised. For all his cruelty, he loved the moment between inhalation and scream. The instant when world realized its truths had withered to lies. People below sensed that precipice. Many fell to knees, offering gold circlets, strings of pearls, tokens worthless to flame. Euron let the hush stretch like a drawn bowstring. Then softly he spoke. Karth, jewel of 3 deserts, keeper of spiced illusions. Open now your house of the Undying, yield the shade of visions to the eye that sees. His words carried, depositing themselves into each skull. For hours the standoff lingered. Finally, gilded gates swung outward. A palanquin emerged, borne by slaves in silver masks. Upon it sat Pyat Pri, skin corpse pale, lips blue as winter graves. He bowed from waist, trembling. Great king of storm and silence, he croaked. Enter our house. Drink of our shade. Teach us the path to true dragon power, and Korth is yours. Then the name told her war. Euron clasped hands behind back, and stepped onto the skiff, waiting. One hatchling shadowed his shoulder. Spirits followed stratosphere high. He glided toward the quay under lanterns shaped like weeping maidens, each tear a droplet of amber glass. Behind him, the silence watched. Figurehead Kraken smiling its midnight steel grin. He passed between columns carved as entangled lovers, through halls where perfumed smoke coiled. Whisper songs clawed at his senses. Illusions of thrones of ivory, a maiden's sigh, his own childhood voice pleading on pike. But he was not a man to swallow dreams unwitting. He devoured them instead. Each hallucination shattered on his mind's iron, feeding the ring's hunger. At last he entered the great chamber of the Undying. Indigo gloom pulsed. Heartbeats unknown throbbed in walls. The Undying ones, shriveled figures hunched upon tattered thrones, raised hollow eyes. Their voices crawled across marble like centipedes. Who dares? Who wakes old blood? Euron laughed, sound booming, his single eye blazing skyfire. A new doom. He raised the branded palm. Every spirit outside screamed. The chamber cracked. Walls peeled open like petals, revealing night sky alive with flame serpents. The Undying reached for him. Gray claws grasped, but could not find flesh. He stepped forward, drew a dagger cut from solidified lightning, gift from a shadebinder long dead. He plunged it into the beating blue heart at the chamber's core. The heart burst, wailing. Blue ichor sprayed, sizzling on his boots. The Undying dissolved, robes collapsing upon thrones. From the broken heart rose a plume of azure flame that twisted into yet another dragon spirit, small but sharp of fang. It paused, eyed him, and bowed its crested head. Euron exhaled approval. More for the swarm. Outside, as dawn tinged the horizon, Qarth's walls stoked with ghost fire. The pure-born prostrated themselves, offering keys to every vault. Euron emerged, shadow dragons swirling overhead, skin stained with splinters of blue light. Crowds parted, awestruck. He climbed a wide thoroughfare toward the spicer's market, each step imprinting sigils of shining onyx upon white marble. Hatchlings flitted around him, snagging jewels from awnings to adorn their necks. Behind, drakes lumbered, tails smashing silken tents with casual might. At market center he halted, gazed upon the world of silk, spice, and songbirds, now hushed under draconic gaze. He inhaled the aroma. Cardamom, pepper, fear. My empire, he murmured, has only begun to breathe. He looked west, where far across seas lay Westeros with its iron chair. The spirits followed his stare, wings stirring dawn. I am coming, he promised the invisible horizon, with ghosts and fire. Let kings polish their crowns, soon they'll serve as candle holders. He drew a slow breath, feeling within him the gate's residue, a promise of realms beyond the sky. And after crowns, the stars. Above, the eldest spirit unfurled fully, a living void outlined in emerald. It roared, and the roar trembled across deserts, across seas, into dreams of every sleeping child. Euron Greyjoy smiled, and in that smile, the doom found a new deliberate shape. Inganauhe. Smoke still braided the dawn air above Qarth, when Euron Greyjoy descended the jade steps of the Hall of 1,000 Thrones, palms black with dried azure ichor. New hatchlings coiled around his shoulders like living epaulets. Market avenues lay strewn with shattered lapis, overturned palanquins, and silks once worth a spice king's ransom, now trodden into mud beneath fleeing sandals. The pureborn who had survived the night knelt in phalanxes across the great plaza. Bare-armed despite the chill, jewelry piled in penitent heaps before them. They peered up as children might regard a summer storm. Awed. Small, too late to run. Euron paused on the last stair, savoring the hush that followed his every footfall. The breath-held silence of a city trying not to guess which heartbeat might be its final one. At his back, the 4 full-blooded drakes lounged atop the palace balconies, tails lazily sweeping mosaics into rubble. Their scales caught the sunrise in molten prisms, bronze-veined violet, iron-flecked obsidian, one shimmering with an oily sheen as though forever drenched in spilled lamp oil. Overhead, the elder spirits circled in vast gyres, their translucent forms swallowing and refracting dawnlight until the very day itself seemed to pour from their wings. The newly hatched half-spirits, still no larger than hounds but growing by the hour, flitted through archways and colonnades, experimenting with flame, no hotter than a baker's oven, yet hot enough to scorch marble veils from statues. Each chirped when it discovered some new joy, the squeal of ivory blistering, the way bronze ran like wax when licked twice. Euron lifted his branded hand. Immediately the hatchling stilled, wings folded, eyes aglow like burning garnets. He extended one finger toward the cowering pureborn. A single hatchling glided down to perch upon the jeweled dais before them, violet flame chuffing from its nostrils, in rhythmic puffs. The nobles flinched backward as the creature snuffled rings and torques, then selected a sapphire torque of most artful filigree, and snapped it in two. The gesture, idle, almost bored, drew a groan from the whole assembly. Euron's grin split wider. "Today," he said, voice ringing across pillars, as though the stone itself were his trumpet, "you are relieved of burdensome trinkets. You will gather caravans brimming with spices and salts and silks, enough to clothe every orphan in Volantis and Marine. You will load jade, amber, ivory, and the deep wine of ebon port upon my ships. These hatchlings tire quickly on air alone. They require tribute worth their flake." The eldest pureborn, gaunt, robes torn where a fleeing hawk standard had trampled him, licked cracked lips. "Great Lord, what of the 13? Of the Spicers Syndicate? They will object." "They already object," Euron replied, flicking ash from his cloak. "They object with their bones. You will stir no more objections." His eye, bright as cut ice, traveled the crowd. Gifts of coin and cloth are the merest beginning. I require maps hidden in vaults beneath the Garden of Gehenna. Charts older than your ancestors' commerce. They mark deep tides and hidden reefs along Ashai's shadowed coast. See them delivered before sundown. Murmured assent broke like wind through a field of reed grass. Euron turned, cloak whispering across the last step. As he passed a toppled bronze idol of the old father, he paused, crouched, and pried a gem eye from its socket. The statue's other eye was already gone, claimed perhaps by a desperate beggar or one of his own hatchlings. Euron rolled the gem along his knuckles and flicked it skyward. A spirit dove swallowed the glinting stone and wheeled off chuckling in crackling static. The plaza gasped. Back aboard Silence he found One-Eye Joss pacing the quarterdeck, muttering at ledgers like a rat ringed by cats. At intervals a hatchling landed on the parchment, singeing columns of figures into unreadable curls. Joss would blow frantically, shoo it away, scratch again. When Euron mounted the steps, the captain sagged in relief and thrust the ledger open. "Tribute tallies, Lord," Joss rasped. "Spice by the ton, silks by the bolt. But there's more gold plate than we can stow without ballast shifting. I can scuttle the 2 Volantine grain hulks to make room." "Scuttle nothing," Euron waved. "Spread the wealth across my new galleys. Let every captain feel the shine of fortune beneath his feet. Greed buys courage better than rum." "Dalmatine?" A hatchling fluttered to land upon Joss's bald scalp, tiny claws pricking just enough to draw blood. The captain froze, quivering. Euron watched, amused, until the creature began chewing a silver earring, still lodged in Joss's lobe. "Hold still, Captain," Euron advised. "Attachment is pain." Joss shut his eye, lips white. After a moment, the hatchling bored and skittered away, leaving a jagged tear where ring and part of ear had been. Joss exhaled in silence, blood trickling down his neck. Euron clapped his shoulder, gentle as a falling hammer. "Ashai next," he said. Joss's throat bobbed. "That far east, Lord. Few charts. Monsoon storms this season." Euron's concept of east in season belonged to a different geometry. He pointed to the spirits ranging high above. "They will show the path. Splice together any map that disagrees and feed it to the hatchlings. They relish parchment." 2 hours later, his Volantine escorts trimmed canvas, hulls heavy with looted trade bars of obsidian and sealed amphorae of night wine. The entire fleet glittered like a drifting city, banners newly painted with an eye encircled by broken chains. Before departure, Melora of the Cinder Vale arrived bearing a gift, a cloth-wrapped relic pulled from Korth's Shadow Market, rumored to be a finger bone of a white-flamed saint. Euron took it politely and plunged it into a barrel of pitch. The priestess shivered. Understanding was a wound that never quite healed. They cleared the jade gates at dusk. Spirits soared ahead, carving corridors through stubborn monsoon swells. The wind bellowed from the northeast, heavy with the scent of camphor forests burning somewhere unseen. Euron stood alone at the prow, branded palm on Silence's iron kraken, watching lightning whirm across cloud stacks, the color of bruised wine. Each flash struck distant water with spires of molten silver that hissed to steam before thunder even spoke. It pleased him to imagine the flashes were footfalls of the god he'd set loose. Night fell, a woeful, starless thing. It smelled of secrets. Spirits vanished into that black, their ember eyes winking like false constellations rearranging infinity's altar. Within the gloom, Euron traced their flight patterns, discerning shapes. A spiral funnel, a 5-pointed star, once even the outline of a kraken-sigilled crown. Was it salute or omen? Hard to know. The line blurred. Below, in the hold, the lesser hatchlings molted. Old semi-spectral hides peeled away like sloughed shadow, leaving fresh scales hardening to the weight of mortal flesh. They shrieked at each other in voices part metal, part wind through a broken flute. Sailors drummed fists against beams, chanting wordless cadence to muffle fear. But the drumming died when one hatchling began echoing the rhythm, talons tapping perfectly on the planks overhead. On the 5th day, a hull cracked its keel, in rough chop. Azure drake fires cauterized the wound. Fusing oak to obsidian, with no more ceremony, then mending a torn sail. Euron watched the spectacle from his stern window. He caught the scent of burning resin and was transported to childhood bonfires on Pike's storm-lashed cliffs, when he'd hurled his brother's toys into flames just to watch something beloved turn to ash. The memory thawed him. He drank spiced night wine and left the window open, letting flecks of char drift onto his tongue. By the 7th day, the fleet pushed past the Mantarasian shoals. No charted coastline lay beyond. Only rumor, shoals of leviathans, and that ragged edge mariners called the Vale of Sighs. There, the sea turned a sickly oil green and rolled wrong, as though tides obeyed an undertow buried in the marrow of the world. Stars refused to appear. Constellations twisted, their familiar alignments warping into snarls. Even Euron's drakes grew restless, wings beating the air too fast. The elder spirits, though, seemed enlivened. They darted like hunting swifts, carving the air to ribbons. Dawn came sullen, a bruise across the horizon. It revealed a sight none aboard Silence ever forgot. The water ahead falling away in a vast concave trench, a sea valley miles wide, as though some colossal entity had scooped ocean in cupped hands, then vanished. Waves cascaded down the valley walls, foaming green waterfalls that roared without echo. In the depths below churned a cauldron of phosphorescence, swirling currents of luminous plankton, or perhaps something else entirely, too bright, too purposeful, like veins pulsing through the planet's exposed heart. Sallow Siegfried crossed himself with stitched lips, eyes rolling. Joss clutched the rail so hard knuckles cracked. Euron's own heart hammered, but not in fear. The sight looked exactly like his oldest dream, one whose meaning he'd never fully grasped until had seen the doom flare across the heart. He gestured for Silence to hold at the rim. Spritsail yards creaked, halyards slithered, the entire fleet hove to in uneasy formation. Across decks, men whispered the same word. Chasm. They spoke it like a prayer to halt its widening. Euron summoned a spirit. It swooped, translucent wings slicing mist, and perched on the capstan. He pressed his branded palm to its luminous chest. Command passed through skin to ember. The spirit dove into the chasm. As it descended, its glow intensified until it became a falling star, spiraling deeper, illuminating outcroppings of black stone ribbed with crystal. When it reached the luminous brew far below, the spirit plunged beneath the surface and re-emerged moments later, carrying a shard of something so bright the day dimmed around it. It ascended, shy of breath though spirits had none, and placed the shard at Euron's feet. A scale, clearly dragon-made, yet forged of pure light petrified into matter. It hummed in a key his bones found familiar, the note that had first drawn him to Valyria's ash coast. He bent, touched its edge, and lightning crawled up his veins. Images blistered his mind. Titans of fire diving through oceans of cloudless dusk. A serpentine gate framed by rings of broken stars. Voices layered on voices repeating one concept: home. Ashai, Euron whispered, eyes glistening. Not the city. The wound beneath it. Mentandame. The scale flickered out, dimmed to mundane opalescence, and crumbled to dust. He let it fall through the gaps in Silence's deck. Then he barked orders. From the aft castle, Melora raised her lacquered staff, chanting the fire hymn backward. A sacrilege potent enough to break its meaning. Waves shuddered, parted before Silence's prow. The ship slid into the chasm's sloping throat, wood groaning as gravity warped into something new. Other galleys hesitated until Euron's spirits dove like shepherds, prodding them forward with tales of charged air. One merchantman, rich with cinnamon cargo, turned broadside in panic. A drake clipped its mast, snapped yardarms, herded the vessel into line. As the fleet descended, lanterns were extinguished from sheer shame. The glow from the living water below rendered all man-made flame anemic. Ropes twitched like muscles. Crewmen heard murmurs rising from the deep, a polyphonic chant without words. Some pressed hands to ears, others leaned over rails to listen. Those too eager sometimes toppled, plunging to vanish in lambent swirl. No body ever surfaced. Euron watched one such splash, and saw the water accept flesh, like mother's milk. The surface closed with gentle ripples, and the chant did not pause. Hours later, keels sliced through the luminous plain. Silence entered a void-lit underworld, where water became air. Air felt like water, and the sky overhead was a ceiling of moving brightness. The fleet sailed through inverted reflections of itself, each mast mirrored below like a dead twin. Spirits hissed joy. The drakes flapped uncertainly, confused by buoyancy thick with charged motes. They soon discovered they could ride thermals of light, wings barely stirring. Euron felt minutes stretch thin, time itself rubbery. He lost track of breaths. Once he closed his eye, only to open it and find his beard grown by a finger width and crew nails claw-long dyed. But memories of that interim were absent, replaced by the taste of cinnamon salt and a half-forgotten lullaby from Pike, sung by a mother he barely recalled. In this drift of dislocated hours, the spirits guided them toward a faint glow ahead, different from the omnipresent shimmer. Redder, throbbing like a wound. Eventually the water air seethed into mist. Colossal basalt pillars emerged, each banded by rings of corroded copper rendering symbols, so ancient they defied translation. Between pillars unfolded a mouth-like cave, breathing hot sulfur. The spirits slowed, wings furling in reverence. Euron knew they had reached the threshold of shadows, the place where Ashai's harbors ended and legend began. Mariners spoke of stone quays etched with forbidden runes where only corpse cargoes were offloaded. But none had photographed this entrance. He felt the sigil on his palm heat until skin blistered, yet he did not pull away. "Drop sail," he ordered, voice hoarse. The fleet anchored in shifting haze. Rowboats were lowered. The water here clung like honey to oars. Euron took Joss, Sigfrid, and Melora, plus a single hatchling buzzing with static excitement. They rowed into the cave. Walls slid past, sweating rivulets of tar. At intervals, lantern niches held candles of black fat burning green, each flame revealing carved reliefs of creatures that might have been dragons, or might have been memories of dragons, retold by delirious stone. In the glow, Euron saw lines connecting images, a spiral linking dragonhead to kraken tentacle, an eye nested in concentric storm waves, a crowned skull drinking a river of fire. He laughed softly. So old, the memory of his empire predated his birth. They arrived at a landing platform where chains thicker than castle siege links hung from unseen anchors. Atop the platform sat a stone throne fused with the ribcage of some colossal beast, ribs arched overhead to form a canopy of vertebrae. Upon the throne rested a woman. No, not a woman exactly. Her hair was silver white, cascading like winter waterfalls, and across her lap lay an egg darker than pitch, veined with ruby light. Her face bore dragonish beauty, but eyes were matte black voids, as though orbits were cut straight through her skull into night itself. She watched them approach with a stillness deeper than death. Sigfrid moaned behind stitched lips. Melora raised her staff, but flame sputtered, bent backward, extinguished itself in shame. Euron felt neither fear nor lust, only inevitability. He disembarked, boots clanging hollow on the metal-flecked stone. The woman's lips parted. "Crow's eye," she intoned, voice echoing inside minds rather than ear canals. "Carrier of the broken gate. Why do you hurry across dying maps when you have not yet devoured the living one?" Euron touched his branded palm. "Because the world above still clings to breath. I will teach it to sing in shrieks. Words forged of stolen notes," she replied. She stroked the egg. Crimson light pulsed. "Will you steal even your own soul's melody to drown it in thunder? I will trade my soul for a song that never ends." The void eyes widened, perhaps approval, perhaps sorrow, then grasped the night worm, she said. She offered the egg. Its surface bubbled with heat, but frost haloed her fingers. Euron accepted the burden. His palm seared. Within the shell something shifted, a coil slithering, scales scraping interior. "This dragon, unborn, cannot fly above sunlit lands," the woman said. "Its wings span the abyss between galaxies. To hatch it, You must birth the world's blackest silence, the death of every ocean's sigh. Bunterpalken. Euron felt a tremor of desire so sharp he nearly staggered. Tell me how. Shatter the moon's sea stone that roots the world's tide. Let the waters cease their pull. Let wind forget its voice. Stillness will crown you. From that hush, the nightworm clamber into sky, devouring dawn forever. The sea stone, he echoed, memory racing to tales of Storm's End's foundation, to myths of the oil-black stone mounds of Old Town and the stepstones. Some said those blocks were remnants of a fortress erected by Deep Ones. Others whispered of the seastone chair of the Iron Islands, carved from a meteor's heart. Euron's thoughts sharpened. He looked into the egg's veins. They pulsed in rhythm with his heart. Each beat spread cracks along the shell, but it held for now. When it broke, he would need the hush she spoke of. A hush so vast it could smother every wave, every gull cry. An impossible hush. Unless one wielded dragons of flesh, ghosts of flame, priests of fire, silent crews, and the weight of a doom reborn. He smiled. Then I sail west again, he said, past ocean's belly to the birthplace that shunned me. I carve its chair into dust. The woman inclined her head. The tide is a loyal servant, until you unmake its master. Beware. When stillness reigns, sound itself will thirst for you. Euron laughed. I carry oceans of sound enough to drown any thirst. He tucked the nightworm egg beneath his cloak. The branded sigil blazed until cloth smoked. Behind him, Melora bowed so low her forehead bloodied on stone. Siegfried shivered like a cracked tuning fork. Joss simply stared, beyond words. The woman vanished, not with swirl or smoke, but by the lazy act of reality deciding it had mispainted that corner. Throne, bone canopy, all remained. She did not. Euron traced the vacancy with one fingertip, then turned on his heel and boarded the skiff. They rowed back through honey-thick water. Spirits escorted them, unusually quiet. Above deck, hatchlings sniffed the egg beneath his cloak and whimpered, retreating. The elder drakes recoiled as though scenting a predator. Euron stroked their muzzles, murmuring half-remembered lullabies from the Kraken priests of the storm god. The drakes calmed, though their pupils remained slits of alarm. He convened captains that night in Silence's great cabin d'Audu. They gathered beneath a chart hastily inked by Carthian cartographers. An oval world hemmed by deep water stains. Euron slammed the nightworm egg onto the table so hard the oak splintered. The captains flinched. The egg creaked but held, its glow pulsing. We return west, he told them. Volantis, Meereen. They were kindling. Now we burn pillars. We sail for the Iron Islands first, but not to kneel at my brother's stump-like dais. We go to the monstrosity he sits upon. Nah. Captain Derek of the Jade Manticore blinked. Seastone chair? Lord, that relic. Relic? Euron snarled. It is the vertebra of a fallen star, a cipher locking tide and moon in wedded orbit. We unwed them. We break the spine. Melora spoke, voice fragile. If the tides die, ports drown, rivers stagnate, kingdoms starve on their own filth, then they shall starve singing my name. No one answered. The glow from the egg painted their faces corpse pale. Outside, the sea moaned, a hungry sound, half prophecy. Euron dismissed them. Save Joss. The captain lingered by the shattered table. Lord, he whispered, there are rumors. Storm's End's maester writes crows warning of ghost dragons. The red keeps alchemists try waking wildfire caches. If we cross again, we'll meet cannon ballistae, maybe more dragons. Euron placed a hand on Joss's ragged earhole. Then you'll see fire like candles snuffed. Do not falter, Captain. When we break the world's back, you'll stand upon the shore and name yourself the first man of a new age. Joss swallowed. A new age must have men enough to live in it. Men will crawl from wreckage, Euron said, stroking the nightworm shell. They always do. 2 days later, the fleet ascended the gleaming trench again. They emerged into normal sea under a sickle moon. hulls dripping liquid light that hissed into steam. The ocean's pulse resumed, less certain, as if unsure it still possessed the right to breathe. The spirits scattered, restless, like wolves scented morning blood. Drakes beat wings northward, nostrils flaring for westerly winds. Euron charted course past Valyria's smoking isles again, this time ignoring ruined bays. He set eyes only on the west. Trade routes fled before him. Tyroshi depots scuttled their fleets. Pentashi magisters closed palaces to debate whether this doom would bother paying debts. Lys sent envoys offering pleasure, men born with dragon-glass eyes, in exchange for safe harbors. Euron accepted the envoy, kept the gift, flayed the courier, and left the harbor burning green. As summer waned, the silence sighted the stepstones. Their drifted fleets cobbled from rivermen cogs. The seen pleasure barges rigged into fire ships, volantine ballista galleys, even a Bravozy trireme, unlikely allies united by terror. Their decks bristled with scorpions and wildfire pots. Banners of half a dozen princes of salt and sky fluttered, none above the others. Euron honored half his ghost spirits high into cloud. The physical drakes he leashed by thought behind island's lee to stalk unseen. Then he sailed the silence alone between the straits, war drums echoing across still water. On deck he erected a crude totem, a harpoon driven through the skull of a warlock from Lys, top wound in purple silk. Atop the spear he hung the nightworm egg, wrapped in silver net. It pulsed like a second sun in patches of cloud shadow. The allied fleet hailed him with trumpet blasts and bold commands. Heave to, prepare to be boarded. Euron answered by standing at the prow, unhelmed. Cloak snapped by gusts, single eye burning with azure starfire. He raised his branded palm, brand now creeping past wrist, veins glimmering. No words issued, only silence deep enough to make waters tremble. Wind died. Oars froze mid-stroke. Flags fell limp. Drums faltered. Every sailor's throat constricted as though air had thickened to silt. From above, a spear of lightning split a cloud, hammered the sea before silence's bow. Steam roared upward, birthing the largest ghost spirit yet seen. Wings span half a league, body composed of swirling storm debris, eyes hollow hurricanes. It down upon the allied fleet. The hush thickened until hearts beat loud as kettle drums in rib cages. Then Euron spoke 2 syllables in the language gifted by the Nightworm Lady. Sound sharper than any man's mouth could shape. The spirit answered with a wail beyond range of mortal ears. Yet bones vibrated, teeth chattered loose, bolts sprang from scorpions. Water around the allied hulls flattened, tide draining downward as if bullied by a deeper gravity. Ships listed, keels tilting on sudden sandbars. Some captains ordered turn. Rudders refused, caught in slush so dense it felt like weighting stone. Euron turned to face his crew. "Breathe," he commanded quietly. They inhaled, though air felt like crushed velvet. He pointed at the allied fleet. "Now let them feel the hush." The nightworm egg flared brighter, cracking hairline fissures. From those cracks seeped vapor thicker than pitch. It drifted on no wind, wafted across rails, across waves, toward enemy decks. Where the vapor touched, sound ceased utterly. Trumpet bells fell silent, though lips still blew. Shouted orders flapped noiseless. Even wood groans muted. Sailcloth snapped in pantomime. Men shouted, but no voice emerged. Panic chewed them like wolves. Some tried drums. Nothing. Steel clanged on steel. Silence. Water over bows. Silence. In that dead hush, the ghost spirit moved. It glided low, trailing a cyclone tail that turned still air to shards of glassy cold. Without roar, without screech, it bisected a volantine galley. The vessel split clean, halves sliding apart in funeral quiet. No boom, no crack, only visual dismemberment. Crew lifted voiceless faces, still screaming silently as decks slid out from under boots. Water swallowed them in hush. Other spirits descended, teachers of silence. Ships burst into wildfire clouds, but even wildfire burned soundless, green gouts rising like funeral lanterns. Silence itself cut through the chaos serene, its oars dipping in water that did not slosh, only parted like cloth. Euron felt the hush feed the nightworm egg. Cracks widened, ruby light running in branching webs. Inside churned something vast. Each swallow of silence made its outline firmer against the shell. When the last surviving trireme attempted flight, a drake surfaced, wings flaring. It exhaled violet flame that devoured half the sea in its path, yet made no hiss. The trireme vaporized to dust, blown away by breeze that existed only for Euron's nostrils. When the hush receded minutes later, the straits were empty but for drifting embers and shattered masts. Sound crept back. First a faint lapping, then gulls wailing, then sailors on silence, exhaling moans of awe. Their ears rang like hammered anvils. Euron loosened the net from the egg, cradled it against his chest. Soon, he whispered. But not yet. The egg rattled, impatient. Silence sailed north along Westeros' eastern coast. Tales outran her. Storms of quiet swallowing fleets, dragons fashioned of lightning, ironborn heralded by ghostfire. Lords fortified harbors, but their men were too few. Their walls too low for spirits that walk sky. At Eastwatch by the sea, a black-clad garrison fired flaming arrows, more in ritual than hope. Euron let the missiles fall, ordering his fleet to sail on. The wall itself interested him only as a curiosity. A toy erected by petty children told fairy stories of monsters. His monsters roamed free already. The world's border no longer required frost. He turned west toward Pike on a moonless night. Silence passed upriver of Saltcliffe, where fires guttered in empty meat halls. Every able man had rowed out, misguided pledge to intercept him. Their longships bobbed adrift, sails torn, masts melted silent days before. Ash sprinkled dark waves like pepper. At dawn, Pike's towers loomed, waves smashing their bases in eternal fury. The Seastone chair sat beneath those towers, in the Seastone Hall of Naga the Worm. It waited carved from oily black rock rumored older than any mortal tool. Priests said it fell from sky in ages before Age of Heroes. It hummed faint, guiding tides and tempests. Euron beheld it from silence's rail, a silhouette against storm clouds. He felt the nightworm egg convulse. The hush seeped outward again, dimming surf roar. "Lower a boat," he ordered. He rowed ashore with Joss, and the first hatchling had bonded. Claws clicked on gunwale as the creature balanced, hissing foam. No other Ironborn met him. The Kingsguard had fled, word of hush suffocating resolve. Only wind remained, ruffling his cloak as he stepped along the damp causeway linking broken towers. Within Naga's hall, driftwood torches guttered before weirwood columns carved as serpent ribs. The Seastone chair reared on its dais, 8 feet high. Barbs curved like teeth, the seat polished by centuries of wet pilgrimage. It gleamed near black, though veins of oil-green shimmer coursed its facets like captured kelp in tide. Euron advanced. The hall echoed every heel strike for a heartbeat. Then hush swallowed those echoes too. Torch flames leapt, but emitted neither crackle nor wheeze. His branded hand tingled. Veins now glowed halfway to elbow. He knelt before the chair not in homage, but to study grooves carved where tide-glyphed runes ran like mattress stitching across arms and back. He placed the nightworm egg on the seat. Fissures widened, one jagged shard popped free, clattering across bedrock soundlessly. Light spurted. The Seastone chair vibrated, dull thrum felt not heard. Its runes guttered dim green, then bright. Euron drew his lightning-forged dagger. With measured reverence he raised it and plunged into the chair's heart. Metal met meteor. The blade sank easier than salted butter, as though black stone had awaited that kiss. Light surged outward through runes, climbing ribs to ceiling. Waves outside the hall froze mid-crash, suspended arcs of salt water glittering like glass. Gulls halted mid-wing beat overhead, pinned by non-existent nails. The hush blossomed across oceans. Rivers paused in mid-course. Fish hung in water like ornaments. In faraway Old Town wharfs cracked as harbor vanished lower, tide refusing call. In White Harbor, piers groaned where unrelieved weight of moored ships strained rope lines. Euron clung to dagger hilt, feeling world's pulse stutter. The nightworm egg burst, shell-flinging diamond shards that evaporated before landing. From within unfurled darkness alive, wings unfurling in folds of night thicker than sky. It bore no flame. Instead it swallowed light entirely, rendering absence. Stars behind seemed to wink out where its body passed. Though the hall was roofed in stone, it shrieked a frequency that vibrated marrow, yet gave no audible sound. It regarded Euron with eye-shaped void lilies blooming in moon-eclipsed lakes. He opened his mind, offered it canvases of endless hush, promised it dawns eaten raw. The creature extended a tendril of shadow, touched his forehead. His skull iced. A scar of frost traced from crown to nape. When it lifted, that frost line shone black in torchlight. The night worm rose, folding rift silence around itself. Like cloak, it drifted through the broken roof stones, blending into heaven. Outside, water remained motionless, as though sea's forgotten gift of motion. Silence lay aground. Hull rested on wet sand, never meant to see sun. Crew crouched, gaping at still waves. Spirits hovered uncertainly, flickering. They thrived on motion of air and tide. Euron stood upon Naga's cliff and surveyed the frozen expanse. Each heartbeat felt thunderous, echoing in hush. Far below, whales hung suspended just beneath waterskin, tails poised mid-flick. Lightning forked behind stationary thunderheads, but no thunder rolled. World had exhaled and could not remember how to inhale. He called to the nightworm across mindscape. It answered with riot of silent images. Stars crushed, gravity undone. An infant universe birth howling yet mute. It waited at the horizon, enormous now. Body spanning miles, winged strokes of void across deep velvet. Melora staggered up the cliff path, robes whipping though no wind stirred. She opened her mouth, but not even breath sighed. Panic glazed her eyes. Euron placed a calming hand on her shoulder, lips shaping message she read by feel. Wait. Sound will return. Only after the first swallow of death can lungs yearn. He lifted both arms, branded sigil blazing like a lighthouse seen through black glass. Sparks jumped, but still no crackle. He closed his eye, drew upon reserves of noise hoarded inside memory. Cheers of sailors, screams of burning slaves, the first wail of hatchlings, the crack when his father's skull split on pike stones. He exhaled them through the sigil into sky. The hush drank greedily. It needed only a spark. Sound rushed back in a torrent, waves crashing, stone groaning. Sudden gull shrieks. Wind howled as though making up lost verses. The sea lurched, enormous surge racing outward from pike like a mile-high tide uncaged. Ships bucked, crews thrown starboard. Some galleons snapped, keels splitting. Others rode crest, spilled onto beaches far inland. The nightworm roared. An inhuman bray so low earth quivered. Its wings pumped once, and the surge magnified. A rogue wall of water galloping across Sunset Sea. 10 leagues distant, it hit a Westerland's merchant fleet, capsizing every vessel in foam and shadow. Beyond, it would cross into Reach waters, swallow Arcuate coasts, grind watchtowers to flotsam. The age of tides had ended. New mathematics now governed water. Euron laughed atop Naga's crown. Rain battered him though clouds were sparse. The sky itself wept condensation of chaos. Spirits circled his head, tails flicking excited bursts of green flame. Drakes screeched joy diving into surf newly stirred. He walked to the sea stone chair, now cracked open. The lightning dagger remained embedded, hilt smoldering. He gripped it, twisted, and withdrew. The stone sundered fully, releasing a final sigh. Its runes dimmed to mossy gray. He nudged a falling shard with his boot, sent it clattering down steps. Chair's broken, he announced to wind. So ends the leash. He returned to the causeway. Silence rested keel deep in sand, but water crept back eager, lap-lapping as though apologizing. His crew scrambled to right masts, cut lines, relight lanterns. Once they saw him, they cheered, some in croaks, others in roar, each voice cracked by hushed toll. He boarded, lifted soaked spyglass to horizon. There, the nightworm soared westward, blotting stars though dusk not yet fallen. It left a trail of hush, then roar. Hush, then roar, like waves of cosmic heartbeat. "Follow," he commanded. Sails unfurled, patchwork fleet behind them, half crippled, half jubilant. Spirits leapt to rigging, not to guide but to escort equals. Drakes wheeled around the night worm, tiny by comparison but emboldened by kinship. Sunset painted the world, bruised crimson. As silence cleared Pike's last reef, Euron looked once more upon his birthplace. Fires burned across Great Wick, where waves had reached deeper than memory. He saw rope ladders sag where thralls had once toiled, heard across distance the faint bell of the drowned god's temple, now shattered. He raised his branded hand in farewell. "Your storm served," he murmured. "Now serve no more." He turned west, toward the yawning maw of night. Across the seas, kings and maesters stared at horizon flecked by thunder-shaped absence. Some prayed, some hid. Few understood that the era flooding into them had no place for prayer. Only hush and roar, hush and roar. Silence sailed at the head of that surge, Euron Greyjoy laughing at the helm, while spirits sang in frequencies fit to crack firmaments. The world stretched before him like a wine-stained map, thought Dot. He would drink it dry, then crack the goblet for shards. After shards, star shards. After stars, whatever music remained when even silence bled color.